Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever this podcast may find you. It is I, as always, Gavin.
And I, Justin.
And we have a lot going on right now. We haven't been posting anything. We've just been posting the podcast, but there's been a lot of, behind-the-scenes work that's been going into our program and, our YouTube channel that's going to be happening in a couple of weeks. But, you and I were all over the place with the podcast today.
Yeah, we talked about I had my first experience in a GTR, specifically an R33.
Well, we met up with this guy, Brad, who has the R33, and also kind of a slew of other GTRs. He basically has one of all of them, which we'll get into. You and I talk about what was the peak car, and we actually agreed.
Yeah.
Which was
weird.
Interesting, yes.
Surprising.
It wasn't about Porsche, but it was about eras. So.
Yeah.
And what else do we talk about? We talk about stuff.
We just talk about Acura's new release of the Type S.
Yeah, that's also true. Hype on that.
Hot off the press.
Yes, sir. Let's just jump into that.
So.
Okay, I don't know about you, Justin. I've had a lot of shit going on. We did our last podcast remote.
Yep.
And this weekend in particular, I mean, the last couple of weeks have been rather interesting on my behalf. Hold on, I got a burp.
Oh, boy. At least you didn't do it in the mic.
Well, yeah, because we're on air.
Save the headphones for the headphone people.
Dingleberry. Anyways, I've had a lot of stuff going on. I just came out of 2 meetings. You joined for the second meeting.
Yep.
I'm calling our podcast the third meeting of the day.
So today's meeting day.
Today really is. I feel like an important businessman doing businessman things. But yeah, our second meeting involved this gentleman named Brad. If you have seen the account Rival GTR on Instagram, that is the gentleman in question. He won some award for an R32 that wasn't Jeff. That wasn't the yellow R32 that we saw today. There's another one. He won some award, I think, at SEMA. This dude is a Skyline fan, clearly. He has an R32. He has another R32 that makes like 700 horsepower. He has an R33 that you and I both drove today. And he has a midnight purple on bronze TE37 R34 GTR V-Spec.
The halo of that kind of car.
Yeah, and also an R35, by the way.
Yeah, that has problems.
Yeah, I don't know.
We won't air that exactly.
We won't air that dirty laundry until after the fact. After it gets sorted. But, dude, what a meeting that was today. And also, before we get too much into it, thank you, Brad, for taking the time out of your day. Asking your wife in advance, hey, can I go out with the boys? we met up with him at his shop that is up north here, and we hopped in. We took the R32, which we can get into. We took the R33 that you and I both drove, and we took the R34 and got Mexican food, which was delicious, delightful. A lot of D's. Anyways.
Interesting. So I was just looking this up. So I have had little to no experience with almost any of these cars. I've seen them, but that is it.
And I think most people share that experience. They'll maybe have seen them at a Cars and Coffee. Mostly they see them online, whether it's YouTube or Instagram or whatever.
Or in media, such as the FNF franchise. I'm not even going to name it. Which is kind of one of the things that made specifically the R34 pop on the map.
Yeah, it's a bong water car.
Exactly. So coming into the situation, having only driven 2 right-hand drive cars before and not being a general Japanese car person, being interested in them but not gravitating towards them like a lot of people
Which we addressed in the NSX film. With the first real Japanese sports car that you've driven being a first-gen NSX.
Being obviously manual, because
manual everything.
Manual everything, manual steering, manual transmission, and thank God, not an automatic. Oh my God. That is one place that I'm very glad none of them were automatics. That would have been tragic.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely tragic.
Except for the NC one, but
that's coming into that and having the experience I did there and growing up around a lot of people that are really into Japanese cars, and then being able to finally sit down and be in a Skyline here today and actually get to drive it. Not much, but enough to get a very basic feel for it.
Yeah.
I have a little more understanding as to why they are on a plinth up in the air as a Halo car.
Yeah, so the one that we drove today, I drove out to Mexican, and you drove back from Mexico, because we did some Mexico type things today.
Yep.
I have thoughts, but I'd like to hear yours on the car in question.
So given that the cars are like, the one that we drove in specifically, the 33, was stock from an engine perspective, like stock power.
Yeah.
But it had an exhaust, it had a blow-off valve, and it had a tiny bit of suspension work. Because I could see it's like there's a tiny bit of camber, and then wheels and tires. That's it. So like, for how modified these things sometimes get, fairly stock.
That's probably a fair representation of a lot of them, if they're not like, a collector quality or collector grade products.
Yeah, and this one in particular had probably been beat on quite a bit because it had the stock clutch with 33,000 kilometers, and the stock clutch was definitely on its way.
No,
up.
it was more kilometers than that, wasn't it? It's like 33,000 miles.
No, it's 33,000 kilometers on the dash.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Either way, not very high on
It
either
wasn't a
accordance.
It wasn't a lot.
For the clutch to be going out, but I mean, in a way that kind of made me glad. Car's clearly been used and clearly been like properly used, which is good to see.
Yeah. And
getting out there, I got to feel several of the things that I've heard over the years. So number one, the power build. So like when you're in it, if you're just letting off at somewhere around 4,000, you'll have hit like a little bit of boost, but not a lot. If you keep your foot pinned in it, it builds progressively, linearly, and drastically. But it's all on a line.
Exactly. And that's the thing. And I think that partially comes down to the inline six factor. I mean, if you compare that to, say, a big turbo, name your 4-cylinder hatchback. Yeah. Either that or a big turbo on a 5-cylinder. Or maybe if you go back, a couple or a few decades and you go back to the 80s and you have, like, say, here's the cliche, 930 turbo.
Yep.
Then it is nothing.
Boom.
Then smack of just like a wallop of power. Whereas with these inline sixes that are in the RB series engines, whether it's either a 26 or a 25 or whatever, or a 30 for some of them, it's not that they're torquey that torquey necessarily, but there is a really smooth and a linear build. But it is also a more aggressive build that happens later on in the engine, as opposed to, say, like an N54 in a modern or a quote-unquote modern BMW. It's not a B58 where it's just like, off of idle and you have like most of your torque. Yeah, and so that build is really interesting to feel because it's kind of the opposite of what normal people would think with a turbo. It's a little dead down low like a turbo normally is, but the build is what's different. Right. Then being a 5-speed, not a 6-speed, that actually surprised me. I did not know that 32s and 33s were only 5 speeds. I can't remember if I ever went for 5 or went for 6. I
pulled them up. I pulled it up on here. R32, 5-speed from factory. R33, 5-speed from factory. R34 is the only one that says 6.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yep.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. So that was a little interesting, even though we never even got into 5th or 6th gear. And the steering was a very good balance of being direct without being twitchy. Yeah. Which sometimes is really difficult to achieve.
And clearly a hydraulic rack.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably something that you and I have been missing from a lot of our car reviews, because there have been some more modern cars that we've been driving, and we're kind of critiquing and criticizing electric power steering. I mean, my Fiesta is electric power steering, but to quote Jason fucking Camisa, is the best electric power steering car on the market.
And at very least, even if it's not that, it's better than the vast majority, for sure. Yeah. Because it's really up there. And I think we both have talked about, for instance, the NA2 being really good, surprisingly.
Well, and that's because it decouples.
Yep. After 20-some-odd miles an hour, it's just off. Yeah. And so it feels that way. NA, by the way, those who don't know, NA2 NSX. So that's the later fixed headlight cars.
Well, also there were pop-up NA2s.
In the very beginning.
Yeah.
But that was surprising. The interior we both liked. I know this. The seating position in the seats.
Mm-hmm.
Again, very good balance of comfort, but good like positioning to do everything you need to do with piloting the car.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I was like that far away from the dash. There was some nice lean to the seats, so I felt like I could actually like relax my body. I didn't feel like I was really far away from anything. You not like that you were far away from things, but we there was the moment. I'm glad I didn't do it, but you know, the mixing up of turn signal indicators and wipers.
Yeah. I twice wipered instead of turn signal.
Yeah.
That's okay. I got it the third and fourth time. I got it just fine. So I learned after the first two.
Yeah. At least you didn't stall the car. Brad stalled the yellow car.
Oh yeah.
But that's also got straight cut gears.
Crazy clutch.
Well, and it's also a sequential.
Yep. So understandable to accidentally stall that thing.
Yeah.
So like those things all considered, and then also we both noticed as well, which I think we both kind of liked, is the dash line is fairly lower. So like you have a good amount of visibility out the front, and it's very comfortable.
That was a 90s Japanese car thing. I mean, it was way more prevalent in like the NSX because, mid-engine spaceship thing. They were really going after mid-engine spaceship.
Yep.
The Skyline was just more of a car.
Yeah.
Compared to the NSX when it comes to like greenhouse and visibility and like that all that jazz, but yeah, it was great visibility, great to just drive. I would love to have one of those as just a daily.
Yeah, and then finally, the final note that I had is that because of the slightly bigger proportions of the car, like it's not a Miata, it's slightly bigger than that.
Yeah.
It like even with the suspension work on this one and being slightly lower than stock, it was really smooth. It was
really smooth.
It was comfortable, and clearly this one's been taken care of enough to where there was no wobble, like the wheels were nice and balanced, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
So it just added to the overall smooth factor of pretty much everything about it. The engine, the steering, everything was really smooth.
Oh yeah, and that's just like the real takeaway for at least for me. And who knows which of these cars we'll be able to drive in the future. Today was a meeting. Today wasn't a video day.
Yep.
But today was a meeting day of just kind of meeting Brad and I assume that was his brother.
Yes.
So Mark.
Mark.
Okay.
So his brother is the one that runs that shop mainly that's in there. So.
Right. So yeah, shout out to Brad and Mark. Yeah, glad we got to meet up today. Everyone is like super excited for like what we have in store for 2023. I got his number, so that would be good. But yeah, so that was like the second thing that happened today for me.
Yeah.
If you're okay with me getting into like
Go
how
ahead.
just weird the past couple of days have been. So we're recording this on a Saturday. No, it's not the usual. The day before, last night, our good buddy Randall and I, and with Darian as well, his wife, we went and got a Korean barbecue and did not a wife swap, but a car swap. So I got to say goodbye to the Fiesta for a couple of days, and I got to take his Veloster N, which is interesting because I see the Veloster N as the continuation of the Fiesta ST, and the car that, like, sure, when I drove the first Fiesta ST that I ever did drive, and I did an article on for Cam Auto Mag a few years ago, like, that, like, lit a fire in me, but I wasn't sure how attainable it actually was, and, like, or how much of a reality it was going to be. And then I drove Randall's, which was actually the full kit car, as opposed to what I had before, which was just the entry Fiesta ST.
Yeah.
And driving it with the Recaros and having Android Auto and having like a sunroof, I was like, oh, this is like for sure the way to go, and I really need this in my life. So his car changed my life before.
Yeah.
I've been wanting / itching for, whatever is next, even though I do plan to keep my car around for another couple of years. And I do see a Veloster N. Like, if I don't go economy truck like with the Maverick and then find some other sports car or something.
Yeah.
But if I do get out of the Fiesta, I do see the Veloster N as like my next move.
It'd be a good move.
It would be a good move because like that car offers and I haven't really driven that car on a squiggly road yet. So we'll see how the driving dynamics are, but from my understanding and my experience that I've had with the car both yesterday and today and also the couple of times I have piloted it. it offers similar sensations as far as like dynamics as my car does, which I fucking love.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like screwed together a lot better and has like better materials. Like the shifter is actually like chunky, and like the door closes chunky, and like there's nothing like that's rattly really.
Yeah.
A bigger infotainment screen, which is gonna be a bummer when I get back into my car.
Bigger and newer, so like a little more modern features and stuff.
Yeah, but like when I plug in my phone, it looks the same.
Yeah.
As like with Android Auto.
Mm-hmm.
But with this bigger screen, it's actually nice because Android Auto did a thing somewhat recently where you can actually have multiple windows open.
Yeah.
So I can have like my navigation on the left and my music or podcast on the right. Like and subscribe for the Expedition Speed podcast. Shameless plug.
Yep.
But while also having like a bunch more cargo capacity too. I probably have double the cargo capacity over like with the seats up compared to the Fiesta.
It's got a pretty wide booty. Like
It's deep. Well, it's also deep too.
Yeah.
Like it actually like goes down.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I started, and then I met up this morning with my good buddy Nate Gracie. Shout out Nate Gracie. He has supplied some Porsches for us over the years. And I also did an article that's on the Exhibition of Speed website on his RS6 Avant, which I suppose, has since sold. But that was actually his shop vehicle that he used to transport wheels in between shops, which is hilarious because like so many people see that as like the Halo iconic dream car. This is the best car you could ever buy, and he's just like, yeah, like I throw wheels in it.
like I literally use it for wagon purposes.
Yeah, truly. And so he and I had a meeting today for some YouTube ventures, which may happen. It's likely that's going to happen. It's just a matter of what it looks like.
Yep.
I get to his place, and last year he bought a 992 GT3 in stick, and has done something. He's done some fettling. He's like removed the wing, and he had some pretty funny sticker bombing on the back bumper.
I commented on when you sent me a picture
I
of
think
it.
because the car's slate gray, I think it's like okay.
Yeah.
It's funny. It may be better if it was on a black car, maybe. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
But like Nate's having fun, and that's what's important. But he's like, so you want to drive the GT3? I'm like,
Oh, yeah, sure.
wait, what? yeah, sure, Nate, I'll drive your GT3. And so we went and got coffee. But I got to drive it.
Mm-hmm.
That shifter, and I haven't driven a 991.2 GT3. I've only driven the .1, which was PDK only. And then the other manual GT3 I drove was with you also, the 997 GT3, which is one of the greatest shifters. Like one of, like, it's up there with Gated. It's up there with, like, Honda S2000, and then it's that, and then...
Maybe NSX after that.
NSX and S2000 I put, like, almost one in the same.
Pretty close, yeah.
So... That was a riot too. It sounds almost straight piped. It's fucking loud.
Granted, that is because almost anything you do to a Porsche exhaust gets it much closer to straight pipe.
That's true because there's also, frankly, less pipe in that with it being a rear engine car than it would be if you had the engine on the other side of the vehicle.
And in that car, being a GT3, there's no turbos in the way either.
There's no turbos in the way. It's a 4-liter flat six, so it's got some displacement to it.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
It's gonna shout.
Yes.
And then after that, he came and met up with me, and we did GTR things.
Yeah, we did GTR things. It's like,
quite the weird day. We went to like 3 totally different like little sub brands. We went the N sub brand.
Well, not even that. Like you go from me personally, I went from front engine, front wheel drive, manual hatchback in both my car, but then the upgraded version of that being Veloster N, and then going to manual rear engine, naturally aspirated, high revving flat 6 car. Granted, just to get coffee, but still an occasion.
Yeah.
And then right hand drive turbo straight 6 front engine,
all wheel. Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of been all over the map, so I'm just happy to be here. It's honestly been a great day for a great day, so that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and I was just looking up random things because, again, I am quite literally a GTR and Japanese car in general noob, and I found one interesting little fact is that every generation, at least for stock, of the GTR, the 32, 33, and 34, gained almost exactly 100 pounds from each other.
Yeah, and like the 33 catches a lot of flack for being the fat one.
Yeah.
Because it's not the one. So it's not the lighter weight, technically, R32.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also not the iconic Paul Walker Dream car that the 34 is. So it's in like this weird gray area.
Yeah, because the 32 from stock is 3,153. The 33, I could see why they call the 33 the fat one, because it has the bigger gap. It goes up to 3,373, so almost around 200 pounds.
Yeah.
And then that to the 34 is only an additional 60-pound gain to 3,439. But the thing is, when you go up to the 34 and you have all of the gains that the 34 got on the mechanical end and the definitely allegedly higher power, plus the fact that this one was a V-spec, like once you add all those things up, the weight becomes much less important because it gained enough to offset that extra 80 pounds over the 33.
Yeah.
I just didn't know that they went up fairly linearly in their weight like that. I imagine it's kind of the same way in the community that the late NA1 and early NA2s where they got to the T-top era is what the fat NSXs or the slow ones, 95 and 96, before they bumped to the 3.2 liter.
Yeah.
I imagine it's probably the same as that, which ironically is also in the same date range. 1995 is when the R33 launched.
Yep.
It's funny how like the Japanese, a lot of their shit has kind of carried on the similar timelines.
Well, if you look at, just Radwood era in general, like sure, Radwood technically exists from January 1st, 1980 to December 31st, 1999. However, there is a golden era for Rad, and it's from 85 people say 85 to 95. I would probably say it's really 87-ish to like 94.
Yeah.
Really.
I think so, because so many of these cars were launched in that time frame.
I mean, if you look at the Porsches that were coming out, 959 came out during that era. 993 had almost come out by 94. That was 95.
Yep.
If you look at the Japanese stuff, when did the Mark IV Super come out? That was later, wasn't it? RX-7, R32 GTR.
So Mark IV
3000 GT, I think, was later too.
No, 3000 GT was early 90s.
Oh, it was. Okay.
Yep. So Mark IV.
So that counts.
Yep, Mark IV right here.
300ZX as well.
Yeah, Mark IV started in 93.
Okay, so that was in that period, yeah.
But then you also have NSX.
Yep.
And you have
Miata.
You have you have R32 and 33.
Yeah, but 33 is like,
it's at the very end.
I would frankly, if we're talking about like actual golden era of like, the peak, I would put 33 after.
Well, and then you have a couple of the oddballs that came out during that time, like McLaren F1.
Yeah.
You have the Jaguar XJ220, a very Radwood styled car.
Yes.
For its era. You have the
because it was designed in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Then you have, let me make sure that I'm correct on this.
Bugatti EB110.
That's what I was just gonna look up and make sure of.
Yeah, that was 93.
I knew that was right in that era. And then, I mean, you even have some of the lower end, quote unquote lower end,
it's all relative.
Like 300ZXs, like especially the twin turbo ones.
Yeah,
like that was a pretty heavy hitter in its time.
Mm-hmm.
And then on like if you hop the pond a little, you have a weird thing where during that era you don't really have, besides the Jag, that much coming from England.
No, there wasn't anything that was actually that good coming from Aston Martin.
Yep, and then
some people might like the Lagonda, but
and
no thanks.
That was also really early in that range, you said too, because it was like mid 80s.
Was it?
Yeah,
but and then also 928. Granted, came out. What did 928 come out in the 70s? But it went for a long time. That went into the mid-90s.
I'm pretty sure the 928 had almost the exact same lifespan as like my Saab 900, where it was like 78, 79 through like late mid-90s.
That's like bordering Countach.
Yeah, so 928, 77 to 95, so almost the exact same date range as my Saab 900.
Yeah, but the best 928s are arguably like the late 80s ones.
Yep, so if I go right here...
Or I guess... Well, actually, no, I'm full of shit. The GTS was like a 95. That was like an end of run.
Oh, Lagonda's earlier than I thought. 76 is when it...
Well, look at it.
Yeah. I still, for some reason, picture that car as like...
That's if Frank Lloyd Wright designed a car.
Basically. I still picture that car as like purposely early to mid-80s, which I think is probably when it gained a little more...
Well, it's like
notoriety.
I mean, it's not the same thing, but like, look at my the Bulova Computron. If we're talking watches, that people and a bunch of people have approached me because I had one.
Yep.
Saying how 80s it looked, or like how Back to the Future it looks. Like this came out in 1976.
Yeah.
So I think there are some things that like might have come out towards the latter half of the 70s, but like it has like the 80s design element that we associate, like the DeLorean, you know.
And actually, I'm going to date check this one as well, because I believe this is right in that range. Actually, yeah, Testarossa.
Oh yeah,
Testarossa is solidly in
Testarossa, the good Countach.
Mm-hmm.
I think not the 25th anniversary one. We don't talk about that.
Well, and if I remember correctly, and you might know, I believe the Diablo was late 90s. No, it was 1990.
No, it wasn't.
1990.
Yeah.
So it's in that range as well. Yeah. So I mean, if you look at it, there's a shit ton of stuff you can plop
there
into
was
that
also
basket.
like the Diablo span from like a weird era for Lamborghini, and that went into like the first couple of years that Volkswagen Audi purchased it.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. So there's a ton of cars that cram into that gap.
I think. I mean, you might be able to fact check me and say how long, but I think it was like a 2 or 3 at least year span from when Volkswagen acquired Lamborghini to when the Mercy came out.
Let me make sure of that real
I think
quick.
it was like 97 or 98 that they bought it, and then like the first Mercy was like what, 02 or 01, somewhere in there, or 03. I can't remember. I don't know.
Let's see. 90. Yeah, you're correct. 1998 was when Audi Auto Group, which is the subsidiary that specifically owns Lamborghini,
Right.
Purchased them, which means that there's 3 years of Diablo left in that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Murcielago
Was like 02? I think it was 02.
2001.
2001 probably as an 02 model year.
Production. Yeah. Model year 2002. Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a little bit of crossover there. So I've never really thought about that. How many of the cars that are now halos in the car community were really created during that time?
And it's also just kind of tagging on the end of that thought too. Audi buys Lamborghini. At the same time that Porsche, also part of that group, just phased out 993, phased out air cooling and going into water cooling at the same time, and also having this weird, funky design that hardly anyone liked.
Yeah.
And then also coming out with, like, I think the concept, or no, when did the TT first come out? That was end of 90s, wasn't it?
That was 98.
8 or 9.
Yep. Yes. So
I think the concept probably might have come out.
98.
Yeah, the concept probably would have come out in like 97 or something. And also the Boxster came out at around that time too. The Boxster was 95, 6, 7, 96 or 7.
Yes.
The Boxster came out.
And then I actually just had another weird thought, which is just from my realm of knowledge.
This is a weird tangent we're going on here.
That's fine. No, because I was just thinking of what other changes happened during that time, and like that's the exact era where Saab was fully bought out by GM as well. And also, and I'm fact-checking this right now, it's almost like that was the era of mergers, the end of the 90s.
Yeah.
Because I think that's also when Ford bought part of Volvo.
Yeah. A lot of business happening.
Yes, business things. In my business car.
In a business suit.
And so, like, there was a ton of corporate maneuvering happening.
When did Ford buy Mazda?
That's a good question. I'll look that up next. I'm just...
Here, Jamie, pull that up.
Right, exactly. Because I think right here... Ha! I was right. Yep. 99 for Ford and Volvo. Wow. I pulled that out of my ass. I didn't know if I was right. I was right. Mazda. Let's check on Mazda as well, because that was another one of the famous Ford mergers. And Jag, actually.
Yeah.
I wonder if those all happened at almost the exact same time. That would actually be kind of funny. However, the difference is that Mazda didn't... Ford never owned a majority stake in Mazda. It was a 33%. So they could never make majority decisions.
Right.
95, actually. That's way earlier than I thought.
Wow. Interesting. Now, I wonder what influence... No, it probably wasn't an influence. I was just thinking about the M Edition, because I think the M Edition came out in 95.
So it was probably already planned and done.
Probably.
And then finally, if I just go fact check the last one that we just mentioned, which was Jag. The Jaguar. Oh, no, that's the Jaguar. That's not Jaguar cars. That's Jaguar as in the
animal.
Mountain lion type animal thing. Jaguar cars. There it is. because it was Jaguar Land Rover that they bought.
JLR.
It was the entire thing before it got all sold to
Yeah,
Tata.
and that got weird too.
Lots of British things have gotten weird with the cars over the years. Yeah, Ford era. Ford made offers. 99 as well. Holy shit. Ford made all those moves at the same time.
Yeah.
And that included Aston Martin as well. So.
Yeah, true.
And
that got a little weird with like Vanquish during that time.
Yeah. Wow, I've never thought of that either, how many things got merged up in there. But I think that was like part of all that we just talked about, because all those cars came out during the era right before that. And then right at the tail end of the rad era, 98, 99, was when a lot of these brands had kind of run out of steam financially and didn't know how to move on.
Because they poured so much money into, developing these amazing cars that we still herald and cherish today.
And a lot of them didn't sell very well at the time.
Like
they sold, yes, but not really as well as a car company would need for them to like be super profitable.
Not at all, or profitable at all, really. Yeah, because like the 993 historically bankrupted Porsche.
Mm-hmm.
I know I keep talking about Porsche, but that's kind of where my knowledge base is.
Yeah.
I mean, Toyota threw a shit ton of money into developing their off-road vehicles and also like the Supra, and like all that stuff during that era.
And then
like, they were like way overbuilt.
Well, and see, I thought of another one
which is why we like them.
Yeah, I thought of another one, which is one that we looked up a ton to figure this out. The NSX. The majority of them were sold in the first 3 years.
Yep.
And then they really dived.
Well, and as cars that were competing against their contemporaries, it was harder and harder with each passing year to make a case for it, because like when you'll have to look up the years for the 328 and 48 and 355, but the NSX was going after 328 when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
Then 348 came out, and that was kind of, from what I've heard, kind of a shitbox until the last year, which I believe was 95.
Yeah.
And then from there, they went to the 355, which, a great driver's car, a fucking horror show of maintenance that goes into those. That's like the most expensive cars to maintain. Fuck, I'm gonna mess up the order.
Yeah.
But F40 is like maybe the top.
Yep.
And then I think 355 is the next one.
They're all right next to each other.
Yeah.
Because they're just a horror show. I've looked up a little bit of it, and I've been like...
So many engine out procedures. Well, and partially because it was a transverse V8.
Yes.
And then for the last year, there's some guy with an Italian-sounding name. He's super famous. I'm spacing on it, but he came... was it Montezemolo?
I don't know.
Look up Luca Montezemolo.
Okay.
I think it was him or his successor came in 95 and said, we're going to redesign the whole underside of this car and we're going to make it longitudinal. Yeah. And then that's what fixed the car.
Yeah, because, the biggest problem was that car had, I believe, and I believe it's every 20,000 miles you have to do a full timing belt procedure.
Which is an engine out.
Which is an engine out in the early cars, except for the last year, because it's longitudinal. You can't get to anything.
Right.
But on the last year, when they switched it, they actually made a hatch. You just take out the seats, and there's a hatch to do all that, so you can finally not do it. But it's just funny it took that long for somebody to come in and be like, what the fuck? And just like fix it.
Last year of the car.
Yeah. It's funny shit. But so you had all that going on where a lot of these cars weren't selling very well. They all got merged around. And then we have kind of like the dark ages for a while of the early 2000s to like 2005.
From like 98 until like, I mean, and I've heard this question on other podcasts where the host will ask the guest of, what era do you think is peak car? And actually, Justin, I'll submit that question to you. What era, not just Saab.
I know.
or Audi. What do you think was peak car where like everyone was coming out with like fire shit or like the best cars were coming out?
So, and I'm going to narrow it down after this, but 3 distinct eras come to mind.
Okay.
And I'm going to narrow it to one.
Thank you.
No, I know. I am going to narrow it to one. The first era that came to mind was the one we just talked about, like the mid Radwood era.
The golden era of Radwood.
The second one that came to mind was...
And I will also need examples, by the way.
Oh, yeah. And that one, we've already talked about a lot of them. NSX, Supra, insert thing here, it pretty much fits.
Yeah.
The next era that came to mind was late 60s through early 70s. So like 65 through 73,
Okay.
you had the Corvette had finally hit its stride with like late C2, early C3 before it got bulbous.
Yeah.
You had Ford putting out quite a few fire Mustangs with like the Boss series and a lot of those good things. You had Aston Martin putting out some of their beautiful cars in that era,
DB5,
as well as Lamborghini putting out the Countach.
Countach was later 70s.
Gotcha. I thought the Miura. Sorry,
Miura. Miura was like 67.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then you had Porsche also starting to hit their stride right there with the turbos coming out really late into that time frame.
Well, the 930 came out in 77.
Yeah, so
and
like
but I mean, so the 911 was what 63.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had like 911S and T, except those were like 68 or so.
So you had like them really starting to get into their stride where those cars actually became a lot of what makes them iconic today.
Well, it became not a Beetle.
Exactly.
Because the 356 was certifiably a Beetle with a better body kit.
Exactly. You had
and also coming from someone who's not driven one.
Yeah.
If you have a 356, mailbag.eos@gmail.com. Holler at me.
Right. You also have, on the American side, you have Dodge coming up with some of their shit that was fire, like the Charger and like all the stuff that has been renamed and rebadged today, which but at the time was really good. Plymouth Roadrunner, things like that.
Yeah.
You go over to Hop the Pond. The Japanese era of that is a little weird because Nissan was doing amazing shit with like 240s.
240Z was 69, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Then you had a little bit later, like
Well, and also the Hako, the Hakasuka, which is the first GTR.
And you have Honda wasn't doing public-facing things as much back then as far as any kind of sports-type stuff. It was doing a lot of racing, though, and a lot of bike stuff.
They're doing bike stuff. When the Civic came out in, like, the 70s, right?
Mm-hmm. But you have a lot of, like, in the Japan side, the seeds of what came out to the Radwood era being planted in those early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that era could be a really good contender as well. And then thirdly, and this one's probably going to be a little bit more difficult to pinpoint, right after the Dark Ages we just mentioned, like 2006 to 2016.
Okay.
There's a lot of fire shit that came out during that timeline.
Okay.
We had R8, we had RS4, we had the first like big boy twin turbo RS6 Avant, like the C7.
Yeah.
Which started to really kill shit. You had
well, kind of. Like it was like that was fast and straight line, and like it was a pointed well, but like as far as sales numbers, and if you look at like what people were still choosing M5, and I would also say this is where CTSV second gen comes in.
That's
because the CTSV, like the first one wasn't actually very good. The reason people buy them now is that they're fucking like it's the Fox body effect, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Cheap V8 speed. You can just throw some money at like cams and fueling and air, and then you have like 500 easy horsepower.
Yep, and that era also encompasses two different Porsches. You have 997 and 991. So you have two very, especially 997 like GT3s and stuff like that.
Turbo, yeah, because 997 GT3, or sorry, 997 Turbo was the last manual turbo that they offered.
Mm-hmm. And you have like Ferrari dropping the 458. Which was a big difference for them, a massive departure.
Big. Well, and that was Ferrari actually becoming somewhat reliable because like the dual clutches became more reliable. The clutches themselves, my understanding is that they at least doubled their longevity.
Yeah.
As far as mileage, they went from every 3,000 to every like 9,000 miles or so.
And then
maybe it's a step up from 9K. I'm out of my gourd here.
And then being in the Dark Ages for a while, you had one other Italian company kind of come back out of the woodworks, which was Fiat with the 500 Rebirth.
Yeah.
Which actually was pretty good because up until that point, it had been Fiats were just cheap shit rebadged Renaults, I believe, up until that point.
Okay.
So we have those. We have.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I don't even. I'm disclaiming that I don't even fully know that because they never hopped the pond.
Right.
We have on just trying to finish out over there in Europe. Mercedes went through a couple weird things at that point, but that was also when the Gullwing came out, the very early of that, like 2006-ish era.
The SLS came out. I mean, if we're talking about 06 to 16, we're talking about SLS came out.
Yep.
Well, the SLR
Mm-hmm.
was 5.
It was like
I'll still count that. We
Yeah.
can put that on the board. But during that era is when the 6.3 motors were coming out. So
Yep.
the E63, the C63, one of the best sounding V8 motors. Period.
Yep. And then if you like BMW, there's kind of a couple lines that happen there because that is literally, I think 2004 was the end of E39.
Mm-hmm.
But this is solidly into the era of E46.
Yep.
Which is really, again, starting to gain Halo status.
Yep.
Hop the pond over to Britain. We start to have the nice Astons come out, the ones that look proper and are still beautiful even today, like the DB9 and stuff like that. We hop over to Japan. We get like Mazda was on a little bit of an unsure foot because they were on the NC Miata.
But ND came out in 2015.
Exactly.
If we're talking about Japan, 06 was the first year of Hawkeye STI, which is about to become an actual collector car.
Yep.
Which makes me feel weird.
We had several of the good Evos for Mitsubishi.
Good Evos were coming out. Nissan R35 GTR came out during that era.
Yep.
Who else?
And then we also had
Nissan came out with the Nissan Frontier. No, just kidding.
We had actually the NC1 debuted towards the very end of that for the NSX.
Yeah.
Which had been really long awaited for.
Long in the tooth. LFA came out during that era too.
LFA.
Mm-hmm.
Then we also had I'm going back to Audi briefly. I just remembered the RS4.
Yeah.
Which has gained its own kind of Halo
also,
status.
but when you come back to the States though, between 20 or 06 to 16, we have the C7 Z06 and ZR1,
yep,
which were monsters. We had, 16 is really when the GT350 came out.
Yep.
But we also had the Boss 302, which was a fucking legend too.
And I was going to say S550 in general. Massive improvements across the Mustang lineup.
Yeah, but with the 302 being kind of like the swan song of the S197 and of like the solid axle cars. That was a really great era for cheap American speed, just in general.
We had the rebirth of the Charger, which like getting up into the higher trims, it's not something I would ever buy, but like it is cheap American speed. If you get to like the SRT, we have the beginnings of the Hellcats.
Yep.
We have
which is crazy because the Hellcat came out in 2015.
Yep.
It's 2023.
It's still going.
That's an old car.
Yep. We did have also in that era, like, what is it? Hang on, I've got to think of it. Chevy SS.
Yeah.
Which is a really slept on, cool American V8 sports sedan.
Well, also Pontiac G8 towards the beginning of that.
Yep.
Too, which is the same thing, really.
Exactly. So like they were all doing shit. Like during that era, they were all doing some pretty good shit. I think for the most part, yes, there was a bunch of blandisms coming out underneath all of that cool stuff, but that's the same with any era. Like, if you look, you're going to find...
So that was just a really, data and information packed session. So what's your grade? What is it?
So...
That's a lot of explaining to do, so you have to pick a good one.
I know. If I was going to pick one, and some of this is going to come down to what I've had most experience with, I kind of have a weird knee-jerk reaction and going for the unpopular opinion of the later one we just finished talking about, 2006 to 16.
That's really interesting you say that. Also, there was a glaring omission that I like to talk about a lot.
Okay.
Fiesta ST came out during that.
Yep.
Yeah.
The reason why I would pick that.
Also, Focus ST and Focus RS came out during that. Actually, that was a really... Sorry, I just cut you off there, but that was... It's interesting, the 2013 to 2019... That was an era with Ford where you could buy an enthusiast car at pretty much every price range because, in the $25,000 range, you had either top-end Fiesta ST or lower-end Focus ST because the Focus ST, I think, was 30 and up.
Yeah.
You go from that to then Focus RS later.
Mm-hmm.
You also had so you had Mustang GT and GT350.
Yep.
You then had way above that was Ford GT.
I just thought of
and you also had Raptor.
I was just going to say Raptor. We missed that one as well.
Yeah.
The reason why I would pick that really comes down to I don't necessarily think that they were figuratively better than the 85 through 95 era that you referred to earlier. I do think, however, it was kind of the perfect crossover of the peak of all of the technology that was developed in those 1990 eras before we started experimenting with the next generation of technology going into a lot of those cars, like hybrids.
There's a lot of like the last of the naturally aspirated stuff that was happening at that time, because as I mean, that particular era, we can fluctuate that range if we want to.
Yeah.
But Mercedes went from the 6.2 to the 4-liter.
Yep.
BMW.
Similar thing. It was
not quite though, because like they still make. Oh, when did the N54 and N52 come out? That's like when the 335 came out. That was like what, 07, 06?
Yeah,
it was like during that era.
So, ironic. The N54's production cycle was literally 2006 through 2016.
Oh,
the exact years I picked. So those came out during there. It was the last of their naturally aspirated for that, but also with the V8s, because after, I think this was 2014's when they went away and were
with the M3. They ditched the 4-liter for the 3-liter, I guess, for the twin turbo.
We had the last of that. We had a lot of the last of the manuals with almost all those cars.
Mm-hmm.
So like RS4, last Audi manual sport sedan. We had same with Mercedes, went like even earlier than that, like swept manuals out of their closet completely.
Well, the last manual Mercedes you could buy here was the SLK, I think, SLK 320.
Yeah,
I think. And that was like 06 or 07, somewhere in there.
They were the first to ditch it. And that was also Ferrari going into 430 had already ditched, right?
Just manuals?
Yeah.
No, you could get a 430 stick.
So what am I thinking of?
Your 458 doesn't have a stick.
I know 458 doesn't have a stick. I thought there was something else.
Well, there's 612 was a manual, but the 5... Well, no, there were manual 599s.
Yeah,
they're rare, but
they did exist.
Yeah.
So, like, during that era is when all of that started to be swept out. So that was the last era where you could get, like, a manual, naturally aspirated, high-revving car.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's kind of in the future. A lot of the reason why I picked that answer is that in the future, I think that era will start to mean more, because that was legitimately...
We're facing this right now, though, too, with, like, cars potentially going, or car makers going potentially full EV.
And so I think that era will become more stigmatized as the last era. You could buy a truly manually driven car, quote unquote.
Sure.
When it's, no turbos, manual transmission, all of that shit.
But also things still work.
Yep. But things had been perfected. Most of the technologies that had been created over the last 100 years had been pretty well perfected.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would go that, if I was to tier those three, right, that would be number 1, 90s would be number 2, and then that 60s, 70s would be number 3.
Yeah.
But I think those 3 eras in particular, if you look at almost all the Halo cars people think about, they're in those 3 eras, almost all of them.
I mean, that greatly varies from who you talk to.
It does.
No, I'm going to join you, I think, I don't know, because... of cars that I like dream about and salivate, there are some good ones from the Radwood, like the Golden Rad era.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of great shit, because like Lotus was still, Elise was still in 2006. They made that from 06 to 11 here, or 05 to 11, something like that, or 10.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great example. Evora came out during that time, because Evora basically made until, like, within the last couple of years, and now they're going to the Mira, which I'd love to have a go in. That's, like, the Amira, I think, is the actual first time Lotus has made a true Cayman, like, fighter.
And actually, I just thought of another thing we forgot to slot into that AP2 S2000. It's literally right in that 2006 to...
Yeah.
That's also
I prefer the AP1, though.
Gotcha.
Because if I'm going to go for an S2000, it's going to have 9,000
RPM.
Revs. Yeah. I need to drive another one of those. You got to drive one of those.
I got to drive one in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult, because my fight would have been between the Radwood era and the Naughties era, effectively.
The Naughties.
The Naughties.
The Naughties.
Because they both have so many good hits, but for very different reasons.
Yeah.
The 90s and the Radwood era were every manufacturer stretching their legs and really going outside of their bounds to try new things. NSX was that. The newer, like the 4 Supras and the 300ZX were that for their respective brands.
RX-7 as well.
Yep, all of those things were switching the game up a fuck ton. And even during this time, there's kind of an honorable mention that I forgot to say, which was Mazda was doing all sorts of weird shit in the late 80s, early 90s with like rear wheel steering and all these other crazy
Not
things.
just them, though. Mitsubishi and Nissan were doing that shit, too.
Yeah, there was a lot of crazy things happening. And then you have the contrast of the newer era where, again, it's like the last of all of those things combined into one car prior to going to all the new technologies like dual clutch transmissions that happened towards the end, like in the end of that era, but also mostly right after that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of wild. I think it would be difficult. And this is coming as somebody that's owned 4 Radwood era cars.
Yeah.
And still own 2.
2 Audis, a Saab, and I guess the Mazda.
Yeah,
the
929.
929.
Which was a really interesting, like I didn't own it for very long or drive it that much, but it was interesting to feel what...
Didn't you have also a...
Oh, sorry, my high school car was a 1989 MX-6.
Yeah, I was about to say 626, but no.
So 5 of them. And like I love them for very different reasons, but I think it'll be interesting to see and give it another 15 years how that 2006 to 16 era shapes up value-wise, because we're already seeing some of the early shit, like E46s, start to climb.
Yeah, I mean, the E46 was such a solid product, though, as far as the experience that it delivers. That, and like, I mean, the golden era for BMW has already been recognized because of the era we're now in.
Yep.
And what we've also the era we've just come out of. So, talking about like coming out of, you know, the F80 and the F82 M3 and M4, how that was a departure from the E90 and E92.
Which is another one I forgot to mention, E90.
Which is another fucking great car. But, yeah, when people talk about... And there are 2 kind of discussions about the golden era of BMW, because there are people there that say like E28 and E30, and like when the E24, like with the Sharknose M6, and like there's that conversation. Then there is the E46, the E39, the 1M coupe coming out just after that, you know, during the E90 era, E92 era. The E60, I don't think real. Well, I mean, it was dynamically competent, but there was a lot wrong with it.
See, here's the thing.
I don't mind the design of that, by the way.
I don't either. I think, to me, the cutoff with BMW is E90, because E60 was where it started to go wrong.
Yeah.
And then from there has kind of continued to go wrong in different ways, depending on the generation.
Depending on who you talk to.
Because, like, E60 was cool, but flawed.
Yeah.
Well,
how high did that one rev? Was that 9,000 for the V10?
I'm actually curious.
It was. I think it was 9K.
It was up there. I know that.
You know, a 5-liter V10 making 500 horsepower, which you could get in a stick.
Yes. That was also the last time they made a proper effort at making a stick car.
They made one for F10.
They did. I just say a proper effort because that was the last time that I think the whole range had stick options.
So, like, what lost stick after E60?
M5s in general.
Like, the F10 came with a stick.
Oh,
audience, sometimes Justin doesn't actually listen to what I'm saying.
No, I
sometimes.
do. I don't know BMW F model numbers at all.
F10 was the one with it was a 4-liter V8 turbo.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know BMW numbers at all, so I was thinking that was the 3 Series.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Because F30 was the 3 Series of that time. F80 was the M3 of that time.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the normal 4 Series is, but I kind of don't give a shit.
Yeah. By the way, red line for the V10 is 8250. So
8250.
Up there, not 9,000, but up there.
I thought it was 9K, but I guess I was wrong. Yeah. I mean, and who knows how much of a real effort they put in with the F10 and, like, you know, how good that one feels. If it's a good manual or not, I don't know. I haven't driven one.
I haven't either.
Those are cheap. Those, for a second at least, were in the 30s.
Well, and that's also, I remember, actually, it's funny. I just searched F10 M5, and literally the first the first article that pops up is the BMW F10 M5, the forgotten M car.
Oh, interesting.
Like literally what you just said. Because I also remember when that was reviewed on Top Gear, them mentioning that like this is a very different BMW experience because everything had changed quite a bit. It's still a big German bruiser, but it's now turbocharged.
Well,
It's
and
now,
that's also when they really started to go away from sports dynamics and went catered to more of a luxurious experience and more for the the dentist or the accountant or whatever.
yeah, they really toned down some things, but made it more of just a straight line bruiser, a little bit less of a carver.
Yeah, less canyon carver or fun commuter, and definitely more of just an Autobahn.
Yeah.
Slaying beast.
Just slaying like 60 to 150s,
Yes.
like destroying.
Or pulling from a light.
Oh yeah, pulling from the light too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Doesn't sound as good, but
that's the other thing in that era. Actually, 06 to 16, so many good sounding cars. Sorry, I know I'm going back to that again, but like so many of the ones we mentioned.
Well, first of all, name your Ferrari.
LFA.
LFA was in there. The 6.2, like I mentioned earlier, in the Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
What else? What else is really good in there?
They're not like they're more honorable mentions, but R8 and RS4.
I would say the R8 sounds great, and
Yeah.
RS4 sounds good too.
You also have like the 997 GT3, the last of the Metzger motors. Sounds amazing.
It does. It's been a while since I've driven a Metzger car. I wouldn't. See, the thing about when a car revs to 9, there is a factor of, oh my god, this thing is spinning so fast. I also subscribe to the notion that just because it revs higher doesn't necessarily mean it sounds better.
I'm gonna trigger a lot of Dorito people, but rotaries.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, I haven't driven a rotary car. I've seen them. That's actually a goal, and there's an individual. I don't know if he's listening. I drove his S52 swapped E30 last year, which is that sounded very good, and drove really fucking well. But I would like to drive a rotary. I think that would be interesting. But if we're talking about like a mid-range guttural, Metzger over Porsche.
Yeah,
for sure. If we're talking like with GT3s and stuff.
Yep.
If you're talking about great sounding engines too, the fucking GT350 Mustang.
Yeah.
Duh.
Duh.
I mean, yeah, I said name your Ferrari, Lamborghini, of course. That's part of their brand. That will forever be their brand.
Yep.
What else was sounding good? I mean, yeah, the Audi V8s, Ferrari V8s, Mercedes V8s.
We completely forget. Forgot, but there is a brand that did technically start earlier than that, but its swan song was during that era. Pagani. They had the nice sounding Zondas came out in the early part of that era, like 06 to 08, and then the Wyra came out during that era as well.
Wyra was 2011 or 10.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we're talking about the first Zondas, those were early 2000s, but they still bled into that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a high cylinder count without a turbo,
With a fairly high red line. Like,
Yeah.
not super high, but high enough.
yeah,
It's
True.
going to sound amazing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, actually, that era was really good sound-wise.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, but...
Ooh, excuse me. Sorry,
You're belchy today.
Oh, it's the Dr. Pepper with strawberries and cream is really doing a number on me.
No, I did want to talk about one last thing, because we haven't really talked about this too much between me and you, but it's something that got announced this week. The fucking Integra Type S.
Oh, yeah, that happened.
Yeah.
So, the Integra Type R, but it's a Type S
Yes.
because it's Acura.
Yeah, exactly. I am decently hype about this. I
Yeah.
think this is really cool, and I'm glad that, like, Acura is trickling some shit down a good direction, like in a price bracket that people can sort of afford.
Yeah, it's interesting because if we're comparing Acura product to Honda product,
Yep.
when the Integra, the current gen, came out,
Mm-hmm.
people were scratching their heads like, I think I kind of prefer the Civic Si a little more because it's like you save $7,000, you don't get all-wheel drive with the Integra. The interior apparently wasn't really much, if at all, better than the Honda. The Honda one got really good.
It did.
And both are the same power plant going through the same 6-speed. So it's like, okay, why? they've created more of a separation with the new Integra Type S. It is interesting that they didn't add a rear axle to this.
Yeah.
It is interesting that they haven't done like a super handling all-wheel drive version of the Integra or the Civic Type R.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you do get the same powertrain. It probably weighs a little bit more, but it also is like a nicer place to be.
Yeah.
With like better leather. It's say it's a bigger differential, but it's take the same idea of going from like the Stinger GT to the Genesis G70.
Yep.
So I haven't looked much at numbers. I've just seen pictures and just a fundamental idea. I imagine it's the same wheelbase. I imagine it's the same car with like a different interior and body, with everything else more or less the same.
It's probably really damn close, if it's not exactly the same.
Yeah.
I do like the triple trumpet exhaust pipes at the end. I think that's a cool, unique touch.
I like that. Yeah, and like that's a clear distinction of this is the fast one.
Yes. Like little distinctive features like that are going to age well, but age with the car. So like what it is. I also like I think the interior is just a grown-up Civic, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's not too different. Like if you get in this versus a Civic, it's fairly similar, but like it's clearly this is nicer.
You don't get like the blaring red seats.
Yeah.
Those are actually like really nice, like luxury seats. And like here you have a photo of like the rear hatch open of it with the rear seats folded down. I mean, yeah, it's still a practical car because guess what? It's still a Civic.
Yeah, and that hatch is probably large enough. Like it's basically a mini Grand Tourer.
It is. No, for sure. And they've done enough with like the body sculpting. I'm not a huge fan of the intake that's on the hood. I assume it's real.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of looks like it wouldn't be, but knowing this car, I imagine it's real.
I don't think it is, because if you look there, so I'm looking at a photo of the engine right now. There's nowhere for it to receive. So I think it is just.
It might be they might have pulled a Mustang here.
I think they did,
which is unfortunate. Just take a normal Integra hood and put it on.
Right? Exactly. Exactly.
No, I think it's cool. I think they've offered it in good colors. I think it's sculpted well. You can see, especially on the front a bit, but also on the rear flare, how it's just how it's poking out and it's aggressive. And I mean, I think you can clearly tell that this is the fast one, and I think they've done a good job with it. The people that I've seen at least talk about it are excited about it.
Yeah,
I haven't really seen a whole lot of negativity going towards it.
No, and I think my one complaint with the interior is it does have a cancerous growth of a touchscreen. Like it is just kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
I think they did it well, though.
They did it better than most. There's more egregious versions of that for sure. It's kind of we'll just call it an average. It's okay.
That's the standard now, honestly.
Yeah, it kind of is. I do. Of course, many people were just rubbing themselves raw about the fact that it's offered in manual and only manual.
Great,
fantastic.
I mean, it's also fucking obvious.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's something that should be celebrated for sure. It's also like, yeah, duh. Scroll down. Keep going. To the end. There. So yeah, they haven't announced pricing yet. Car and Driver in this article says we're hoping it comes in under $50K.
I think it'll be, if it does, it'll be damn close.
I bet it'll be $49,995.
Yep.
And they're talking about German rivals of Audi RS3 and the M235i Grand Coupe. Sorry. Did I say M235i?
Yes.
I said the 2. Yeah.
Yeah, and you said RS3, but this says S3, which is probably...
Did I say RS3?
You did.
Oh.
Which is definitely one caliber above this.
It is. From what I've seen... So, let me break this down a little bit. The M2... Or, sorry, the 2 Series overall, if you get the Grand Coupe, it's front-wheel drive.
Yep.
It's the fucking ugly runt of the group.
Yes.
I don't see any redeeming factors, really. Wait a minute. Click on that. Click on the Grand Coupe one. Just to see. Yeah, it is that one. I just wanted to confirm it. By the way, that can be spec'd up to over 50.
It's BMW. I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Go back. So that or S3. The S3, along with just other cars from Audi, they've gotten more aggressive in a way that I'm not particularly fond of. On the outside, the inside is okay. It is an evolution of Audi's just infotainment and their interior design. I think that's fine. The Integra Type S, I think, is the one I'm taking home.
Yeah, agreed. I think this feels a lot more unique, and it feels like you're getting a lot more interesting, usable things for your money.
Right. I do see a sense of identity rather than just some, like, androgynous fucking glob.
Rather than, like, with Audi and BMW, the corporate overlords saying, oh, we just need to drop something down low enough on the totem pole that somebody can afford it.
Well, I don't necessarily see that with the S3. I'm sure the S3 is a great car.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't driven any of these cars. Yeah. I just don't see the S. It's hard for me to see much of a value in new Audis right now. I think if you want an Audi that is between $45,000 and $55,000, get a used RS3.
Yeah, I completely
I would say
agree.
get an RS3 from like 2019. You get the first of the newer updated Haldex all-wheel drive, so you actually get like a really like chuckable and also easily rotatable car.
Mm-hmm.
It's before they got too busy with the design, and you get that 5-cylinder turbo that you can throw a bunch of power at if you really want to. I see more value in that than, say, a new one, because the new ones are like 70, I think.
Well, and even in that same exact vein, the TTRS, if you just want a two-door, awesome little car.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know,
Same car,
price range.
Same car, just like, 4 inches shorter?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. And like 300 pounds less. But that's more, if your lifestyle warrants more of a sports car, and like if you don't need to carry that much shit, but you like the look of the coupe and you want that vibe, then yeah, by all means go for it. I have nothing positive to say about the M235i Grand Coupe.
Same.
But what I also wanted to say too, in that price range, and it's not mentioned here, but the M240,
Yes.
which is the same chassis and similar body, just not as busy as the new M2, which is fucking weird.
Yeah.
It just looks it is not that attractive to me, and I believe to a lot of other people, especially color depending. It can look bad. It's also just weird.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember it was probably like 6 or 7 podcasts ago we talked about this briefly, but the front end is very square and frumpy. It's just
So they took the new M240, which is already proportionally a weird looking car, and then like it's almost like you see where okay, sorry, I'm not very radio friendly today, but with the M240 you have weird proportions of like length of hood to cabin space to like rear deck lid proportions are weird.
Yeah.
And like some of the lines are kind of contrasting. And then you come up to the M2 and you have that same car, but where there should be kind of some more rounded off like intakes or grills. And you take that space behind that, which is the body that supports that, and it's like someone just like took that panel and just pulled it out and squared it off. It almost looks like it would be like shipping, like a protector for like shipping, kind of like with like on the SRTs with like the yellow bumper cars.
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
Like that looks like something tacked on for shipping's sake, but no, it is actually just like cooling. And I understand that these are hot engines. They produce a lot of power out of a not really that large of an engine.
Yeah.
More boost, and they need that OEM level of reliability. I get that. It's also fucking weird.
It doesn't mean it has to be done this way. That's the thing. And I think that's where we can both agree that there's different ways to have accomplished that same goal.
Yeah, can you please take that down now?
Okay. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay, we're back to the Type S. Thank goodness. Thank you, Acura.
Thank you.
Well, and actually, as a final note on this, one of the things I'm glad about is it has taken what I would say are the good parts of their design language and integrated them all really well. I'm not talking about the fender flares or the things specific to this, but it looks clearly like an Acura, like with their current brand image, but it takes all the good pieces. Because there's a couple of the Acura models that are like not that well integrated into the brand image. Like, they look a little weird.
Well, at least they're not Lexus, though. Lexus has gotten, I mean, ever since I'll quote Todd on the Everyday Driver podcast, the Predator Maw. Thanks for that one, Todd. Appreciate it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and like especially with like the not triangulation, but the what was that, a rhombus? Would you say? What shape is that grill?
Effectively, it's like a squished pentagram.
Yeah.
Or not pentagram. Sorry, not pentagram.
Octagon.
Pentagon.
Pentagon.
Because it's effectively 5 sides.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, the proportions of like what makes the face of that car, and then like yes, there is lower grill work and other stuff below that.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if you go back to the M2,
Yep.
it is not that, because they tried to keep the kidney grills to make them not like the fucking M4 and M3, which is appreciated. They could have gone that route.
I actually just had an idea. Let me pull this up, and I'm going to see what you think of this.
Uh-oh.
No, this is, I think, actually going to be a good thing.
Luckily, I am sitting down.
Yes. So I just had an idea of one of the things that the Acura, it doesn't resemble it, but it has some similarities in the designs that I think are good to point out.
Mm.
So let me pull this over, and then I can pull these side by side for you. There's that one, and
Oh, I see what you're talking about.
yeah. So I just thought,
It's too bad not enough people bought the 3rd gen CTSV, because like that's not that it's a sleeper or anything, but if you do pull up with one of those, not everyone exactly knows what that is.
Yeah, so I just noticed as I was staring at the front of the Acura that it has quite a few little similarities with the like 3rd gen CTSV, namely like the center grille. They're both pentagon type shaped, and then the lower grills are actually really similar in kind of how they are designed and swooped up.
There's a lot of black cladding that goes around. I mean, cladding invokes thoughts and feelings towards the WRX, but
Yeah,
it technically is still cladding. This black plastic work that goes around the intakes on the side. I see it. Honestly, I see the 3rd gen CTSV as a longitudinal version of the Acura Integra Type S.
yeah, yeah. It's just
like it looks like it has like a longer hood. It looks like it is more of like a longitudinal version, as opposed to transverse.
and I think some of that is actually helped by the headlight design. Like with the swooping headlights, it even evokes more of a
and you take the line that comes out of the headlight, and it actually kind of follows the belt line just underneath the window.
Yep.
That continues all the way back, and it's really cohesive in that.
It's actually funny. I just realized this whole CTSV thing. They all like aged upwards. Every version got better and looked better than the last.
They did. Totally.
They actually did a really good kind of like upwards trend. So
and then they shot themselves in the fucking foot by getting rid of like the normal V, and then there's V Sport.
Yep.
And then they came out with Blackwing, but then they killed it, and then they brought it back. Like the whole corporate structure behind Cadillac over the past 5 years has been a goddamn shit show.
Up until this 2019, it was like, you're doing great. You were doing fantastic.
They were doing fine, and then they started moving corporate offices to like they went from Detroit to it was New York.
Yep.
I think was Philly involved.
There was a bunch of shit. There was like
maybe I'm wrong with Philly, but like, god damn it, guys! They should have stayed in Detroit.
It was like they had a 20-year fairly happy marriage that was just getting better and better and better, and then they just started having mistress after mistress.
Kind of, yeah.
It didn't work out well in the end.
It got weird, yeah.
So,
anyways, don't cheat on your wife.
So, no. Well, I would say
we've been all over the place today.
We have, but I would say to kind of round this out, I'm excited to see the Type S in person.
Yeah.
I'm even more excited whenever the eventuality is that we get to drive one. Because
I wonder if our good friend that likes yellow cars wants to get one.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Wouldn't surprise me either.
To match his other ones.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have the cashola and you're looking for something that's really cool in that hopefully sub $50,000 price bracket,
in like the $50,000 like sports sedan price bracket, because like the Stinger basically doesn't exist anymore.
Yep.
G70. Is the G70 gonna stick around and the Stinger is gonna go away?
I think for at least a couple more years. Yeah.
Gotcha. I mean, yeah, you have that. You have, I guess, S3.
Kind of M240.
Yeah.
But those aren't like M240. There are a bunch of different flavors. Like S3 is a little bit smaller than this. Stinger's or G70 is a little bigger, not by much.
I bet the
but
S3
slightly.
the S3 is still riding on MQB.
Yeah. So it's gonna be similar, but
I feel like a Golf, because guess what? They all feel the fucking same.
They do.
They really do.
But as a final note, I actually do have to wonder, from a more daily perspective, I wonder if this one will do it better. because of the large opening trunk, so it has a hatch-style trunk
Yeah.
with a swoop-back design. Because of being a Honda engine, I have to wonder how good a miles per gallon it's going to get. Because Honda, especially in the last few years, their smaller-ish engines have gotten really efficient.
Yeah. I mean, Earth Dreams.
Yeah, exactly. So I have to wonder, is this going to be like a 40-plus mile per gallon mini sports sedan?
I don't think it'll be that high. What was the Type R get?
Actually, that's a good question.
Because, same drivetrain. Because guess what? It's also still, like, boosted.
So 28 on the highway.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder what'll happen, because it's the same engine, so...
Yeah, it's a 2-liter, Earth Dreams turbo.
So maybe it won't get quite that high, but I was just thinking, if you had the perfect little car, if somehow it was able to get, let's say, even 35, so roughly match your Fiesta if you're playing nice on the freeway.
Sure.
Plus...
But why would you?
Plus, right, I know. Plus all the other benefits that come
Yeah.
with that package. That could be just the absolute killer.
Yeah.
It really could.
Yeah, it could be a really great package.
And just general Honda 4-cylinder reliability.
Yeah, the early FK8, that definitely had some heating issues. I presume they got addressed and they got fixed. I don't know for sure, but by now they would have definitely been fixed until we see someone from the press take one on like track and like they overheat it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh. Balls.
Balls. I'm now doing the finishing work for Honda that should have been done to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, that happens a lot, though.
Yeah, it does, sadly. So, anyways, well, thank you all for listening.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Exhibition of Speed podcast. We were kind of all over the place with this one, but I can only speak for myself, but I've been fucking all over the place.
Yeah.
And also, like, I've been reviewing watches.
Yeah.
Which has been awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently in possession of a Rolex. Yes, I didn't bring it with me today because for our meetings, I didn't want to bring a Rolex to a meeting that isn't mine and also show up in a car that isn't mine, being the Veloster N.
Sitting there flexing around.
Flexing with shit that isn't mine. It felt wrong to do, so I showed up with my own shit today. But next time I will have... Actually, I won't have the same Rolex, I don't think. I think I'll have a different one.
How baller are you?
Oh, you'll see.
Oh,
I'm gonna drop some shit on you. Let me tell you.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you for listening. Go buy our merch on exhibitionspeed.com if you want to read some watch reviews of me trying to be like Ben Clymer from Hodinky. Get at me. Yeah, I don't know. We had a meeting with Rival GTR today. If you don't know who that is, go find him on Instagram. Brad Nielsen. He's a really cool dude. So, thank you for our meeting today. I'm so fucking stoked for what we're going to be able to do this year. It's going to be so rad.
2.5 weeks. Look for weekly content starting to come out.
Oh God.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. May is approaching.
Yes, May is approaching.
May is approaching quickly, and I hope that the canyons are able to clear up so we can actually get some work done.
Yes.
Because if not, we're gonna make a lot of trips to the backside of East Canyon for very little gain.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you later. Bye.